Hi there, I'm going to talk about combination chords or chord combinations or custom chords, call it what you will, but loosely speaking, if you play a chord on the Stradella basses and then maybe a button that you wouldn't expect, you get a chord that changes the chord. So by adding an extra note. So what I just did there was I played a C major chord, but instead of playing a C bass with it, I was playing an A bass on the counterbass row. It's just very near the C button, so it's a handy one. And what you get is the bass, if you like, rules. It defines the chord or the inversion. So it's an A bass. So the ear's looking for an A related chord, and you put a C major above that, and you actually, if you work out the notes on the keyboard, you get an A minor 7. So A, C, E, that's your A minor, and then there's an extra note, a G. Now what you don't get to choose with Stradella basses is which way up all that is. That will depend accordion to accordion. My accordion that I'm playing here is slightly unusual. The lowest note in each octave is a D, which means that my C major is this way up. And you put an A at the bottom of all that, you'd get this chord. So that's how my A minor 7 happens to sound, but they'll be differently, in the chord part of it will be differently inverted on different accordions and also in different keys. But for the most part, as we know, with loads of reeds in the bass, loads of octaves of reeds, you don't really notice these until you start playing more crunchy chords like major sevenths, where you want to hear that high seventh at the top, really. So some of them work better than others. To play a major 7, you can play a C major 7, for example, by stacking an E minor on top of a C. So here's a C and here's an E minor, and you get that lovely. But you'll notice this B at the top is right next to the next C. So if you invert it, you get a more crunchy chord because this semitone plays. So when we're playing, if I just play the chord part of it, so you play a C major and an E minor together. And once you've got this stretch, it's quite a stretch, you just find you can place it in other places, or you can use the bass. Recognise that. And so any major seventh will always be the bass note, and then if you go 1, 2, 3, 4 up, so from a C, G, D, A, E, and then off to not the major chord, but the minor chord, and you've got your C major 7. So if you start thinking about these more complex 4-note chords, let's do all the ones in C. So if you just stack up thirds on the white notes, starting with each note of the C scale, you get a set of chords which are very widely used in jazz. So with a C, I'm just stacking up in thirds. It happens to be a major third, a minor third, and then another major third, and what you get is a C major 7. So you can see that is a C bass with an E minor chord, which is what I'm playing. And then for the D, you get a D bass with an F major chord, that comes out as a D minor 7. So if I'd actually do that here, so here's C, G, D, and there's F under my little finger, there's the F major, so there's my D minor 7. So C major 7, D minor 7, and we can go on. E minor 7, it's the same shape. You go 2 chords down and take the major chord if you like to get a minor 7th. There is another way actually. If you think that this E minor 7 that I'm playing now is a G stacked on top of an E, a G major stacked on an E bass, but there's an E bass here behind this C on the counterbass row, so that's another easier way of playing a minor 7 chord, either that way or that way. It's the same thing, but depends as you're moving about which one you choose. So F would become a major 7, so that's again the same trick as the C with the E minor on top, and F gets, and you don't need to know, you don't need to work it out once you know the shape, because you go up 1, 2, 3, 4 buttons onto the minor chord, and it's actually an A minor stacked on top of an F. Gives an F major 7. A G comes out as a dominant 7. So that's a major 3rd with 2 minor 3rds stacked on top of it. So, and you've got that on the accordion anyway, on your 7th row, of course. But what you may not have noticed is there's no 5th in that. You'll hear if I play a G major with it, if it was the full chord, you wouldn't hear me put down the button. But you can hear an extra note coming in. What you get on the accordion is this: the root, the tonic of the chord, the G, a B, which is the 3rd, and the 7th, and then the extra note you're hearing is that D. So if you wanted that D in anyway, you can play the 2 buttons like that for a full 7th. But it happens actually that the diminished of the next chord towards the ceiling, this D diminished chord, which is also has no 5th. It should be a 4-note chord. But it's got no 5th, which is the one that would sound crunchy with a G. So it's this. And that just happens to be all the notes of a G7 minus the G. So if you play a G bass and then the D dim, which just sits nicely under my thumb, that's a 4-note 7th chord right there. You can play it with your finger, but I find it easier to play with my thumb. It's just where if I'm playing a G, my thumb just seems to be naturally resting on the D dim anyway. A becomes a minor 7th if you stack up the 3rds again. A, and there it is with a C above it. So there's an A with a C above it. A minor 7th. And again, you can use the F, which is the F counterbass, which is an A, and the C major for F minor 7th, and A minor 7th, sorry, and then we get the brilliant half dim, as I call it. Some people call it a half dim, some people call it a minor 7th with a flattened 5th. But basically, if you stack up 3rds from the B on the white notes, you get this: B, D, F, and an A at the top. Now that isn't quite a diminished chord because the first three are, and then the fourth one isn't. It's the if you like, the dominant seventh of the B. So if you had a B minor seventh, it would have a F sharp in it, and then if you flatten that F sharp, you get a B minor 7 flat 5, or alternatively, if you take a B diminished, a full diminished, and you sharpen that fourth note, you get the same chord. So some people call it a half dim, and drawn with a circle with a slash through it like that. That's how the jazz people do it, or the jazz people I know, and or they actually write it as B minor 7 flat 5, which is quite clunky, but that's the chord, and it's there on the, it's a 4-note chord on the white note. So if you just go, those are the chords you get diatonically in C. So so if you want that half dim, it's a D minor stacked up on a B. So if you go for your B over here, and you play your D minor there, there's the chord. This is getting wrong. Oh. It's closer than I think. Or alternatively, if you're playing your D minor here, you'll find the B is here because it's only behind the G. And in fact, in jazz, you do get this progression. You might be playing a D minor, and then immediately get the B half dim following like this. This is quite often kind of happens. So it's nice and close. So those are the main chord combinations I use. The minor seventh, which I do 2 ways, the major seventh, and then the half dim, and the full flat 7. But there are others, of course. If you're playing a 2-4-1, a 2-5-1, like when I say 2-5-1, I'm talking about the if C is the first chord, then D is the second chord, E, F, G is fifth chord. So 2-5-1 is for us just running towards the floor across the chords, and it happens a lot in jazz again. So maybe a D minor to a G7, G7 to a C, but it might be a D minor 7 to a G7 with 9. And now if you linger on the D minor button and play the G at the same time, you get the 7th and the 9th like this, which is one of my favourite ones. So, in fact, you don't even need to play the G chord, you can just play the G bass, and the ear kind of fills in the missing notes, which I guess is the 3rd. It's a good crunchy one. So that was a D with a D minor, and then a G with a D minor, giving a G9, a G7 9, resolving to a C. So those are the main custom chords I use. Did I already show you this? I filled in this whole crazy thing with which will be well, if you're watching on YouTube, you probably need to click the link to go to my website, but I'll post it on my website. You can print out a copy and enjoy these crazy custom chords. Enjoy.